when you grow up, at least in modern America, you're taught this narrative, and George W. Bush actually helped promote this, that fossil fuels are an addiction. So there's something that might be convenient in the short term, but that long term are destroying us. And you're given three basic reasons. One, they're causing depletion. Two, they're causing pollution. And three, they're causing global warming or climate change. And this is used to say, well, they're an addiction. We need to get off them. We need to use renewable, moral, green energy instead.
Right.
And if you think about this, how much sense does this make? The fact that something has risks or side effects, so let's grant that there's some truth to all three of these, which there is some truth, how does that make it immoral? How does the fact that something is imperfect make it immoral? What if we applied the same logic to vaccines? So what if we said, well, vaccines have side effects. Therefore, if you support vaccines, you're a vaccine side effect denier. How dare you? You're so irrational.
I'm going to adopt that case.
Well, now in Southern California, this has, of course, become a big position, but at least most people recognize it as irrational because they say, look, these things save lives. They're vital. Well, if that's true for vaccines, then that's true for the energy that makes it possible for us to have vaccines.
But we don't talk
about fossil fuels. But yeah, and it's important that this is a point not just about the past, but about the present and the future, because you'll often hear, oh, we needed fossil fuels in the past, but, they're no longer good. And this is like saying, oh, we needed steel in the past, but, in the future, we're not going to use steel. Let's use renewable materials. Let's build skyscrapers out of wood. Well, this gets to the whole philosophy of it, because if you notice, whenever they do any kind of development, even if it's solar and wind, once people see that this involves development, the whole green philosophy of anti-impact says, well, of course we can't impact the planet. We didn't think solar would impact. Oh my gosh, it involves all these panels and all. The windmills are big. No, well, of course we can't do that. So it's a very much a can't act philosophy, and that's part of the moral case, is that really this is a battle not about green energy versus fossil fuels, but about anti-humanism and anti-impact, that philosophy, versus humanism and industrial progress.
Yeah,
but we have to distinguish between a negative impact on the planet and a positive impact. What the green philosophy says is we should minimize impact as such. So let's take the decision to build New York City. If New York City was up for a vote today, does anyone believe that the environmentalists would say yes?
No.
What about Chicago?
No.
What about the first hospital?
No.
What about any given baby? No, so the idea is that if humans have an impact, it's bad as such. Now, the rest of nature can have any impact at once. So there's really a fundamental bias against humans. And I think everyone has bought into anti-impact as an ideal, whereas it should be, no, we want anti-negative impacts for humans. So I'm a humanist who cares about my environment. I'm not an environmentalist. That's to define your core philosophy as your environment. That's like saying in work, I'm an officist. Like my whole purpose is my office. No, I want a good office because I want a good job. What I do in the book, which is pretty much you say, okay, let's look at the benefits of using fossil fuels. And you get to what you're talking about, Glenn, which is not just that it powers things, but that it's uniquely good at powering things. So I use the steel versus wood analogy with skyscrapers. It's not just that it can produce energy, but it can produce energy far more efficiently using far fewer resources and other things, which means it can be more abundant and more affordable to billions of people. So the fossil fuel industry should be bragging, we've got the best product on the market. We have a superior product. Instead, what do? They say, well, we're trying as hard as we can to use the loser product, solar and wind.
Let me ask you.
And someday we'll go beyond petroleum and hit that ideal of sunbeams and wind gusts instead of ancient dead plants.
Right. So
it's really weird how we think about climate in a way that completely defies common sense. What is climate? Climate is just the range and frequency of certain types of weather. And if someone said, hey, I want to make sure people are safe from climate, let's find the most efficient solution, you'd probably say, you wouldn't say, it's let me not drive an SUV. That's gonna protect people from climate. You'd probably say, let's develop countries. Let's allow them to make themselves progressively climate proof. Let's take a place where you have 100,000 deaths and reduce the death count to 100 because you have infrastructure.
Like we did in California with earthquakes.
Yeah. So what the story of climate in the last 80 years is, by using fossil fuels, we've progressively climate-proofed civilization, particularly the more developed world where we have fossil fuels. And so what's happened is climate-related deaths have gone down by a rate of 98%. So that means your chance of dying from extreme heat or extreme cold or wildfire is 1/50th of what it used to be. Yet
It's gone down 98%?
98%
in 100 years?
In 80 years. That's when you have decent data started.
Wow.
So drought-related deaths are down 99.98%. So you'd think when people are complaining about drought, which just means less water than you expected, they would kind of be interested in, let's be interested in ways to purify water, to move food from, non-drought areas to drought areas. That's the amazing thing. In the U.S., we don't have one drought recorded death in the last 10 years. We're not shown any human-related stats. Everyone talks about the ppm of CO2 in the atmosphere. We're at 0.04% now. We used to be at 0.03%. This is the debacle of the century. Nobody points out that, hey, we've got a 6 to 7 year increased life expectancy over the last 30 years. Shouldn't that matter to anybody? And why doesn't it? And the key is getting what energy is, because most people have no idea how valuable energy is. So energy is our ability to use machines to improve our lives. Every human being in the United States has an average of 96 machine servants doing work on his behalf. We ourselves are very weak, right? Physically, we're very weak. That's why we had a life expectancy of 30, because we can't do much work. If you get that everything in our lives is improved by machines, and that the machines, if they don't have fuel, they die, they don't work, they're just like us. So fossil fuels are the best source ever of machine calories. They give all of our machines the calories they need to work. And if those calories become scarce, or they become expensive, or they become unreliable, everything starts to shut down. I mean, certainly Mercury Studios, but a lot of stuff besides it. The agriculture shuts down. And every cent you add, say, to the price of oil, that means the diesel fuel in the tractor that grows our food becomes more expensive. That means our fertilizer becomes more expensive. So energy is fundamental. It's not any other industry. It's the industry that powers every other industry. And if you get that, so if you get the value of energy and then you get the superiority of fossil fuels, then you see that you would expect it to have massive improvements if you could use more of this amazing substance. And so historically, we see these amazingly positive correlations between fossil fuels and everything. And given what I just explained and what I elaborate on in the book, that's a very causal relationship. It's not a random correlation that we have climate-related deaths go down as fossil fuel use goes up.